is welcome to Hacker Dojo Lightning Talk, and actually our first time hosting it on this platform, and we're still waiting for the speaker to come in, so just give it a few more minutes.
Yes, it is our inaugural Clubhouse chat. Hi, Meg. You're the special one here, so welcome. Just a heads up, and I'll let everybody know, typically lightning talks for the Hacker Dojo are on Fridays, happy hour time, but since we're experimenting with this on Clubhouse, we decided let's do it right after some lunch, and then we'll have some folks join in. Steph, can you ping Angel? Yes, Angel, hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Welcome to our lightning talks. So Angel is one of our speakers that is on the schedule for this afternoon, if you're in Cali, this afternoon's talk. Let's give a background on the room. This is our inaugural first lightning talk on Clubhouse. So let's do that. We're rookies at this. Hacker Dojo is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're based in the Bay Area. We've been around since 2009. We're probably one of the earliest what you know today as hacker spaces. It's a 24/7 space where someone could come and build their idea, a dream. Essentially, the sweet spot for us is where folks who need help, more on the technical side, those who are looking for technical support, that is usually where you can find the help of Hacker Dojo. It's usually at an ad hoc basis where, hey, I have 15 minutes, to kind of run through the code with you, or I might know a particular type of component that your board might need to make it run faster and more efficient. One case in point is, I don't know if the audience is familiar with PebbleWatch. PebbleWatch was one of the first projects out of Kickstarter that raised $10 million in 28 days. That wouldn't have been possible without the help of a fellow member who helped get the PebbleWatch to a place where it was scalable to produce. Another notable project that came out of Hacker Dojo was Pinterest, also formerly known as Corkboard. So from what we were told, Corkboard started out of Hacker Dojo back when we were in the Wisman location. Anyway, so that's the little background on Hacker Dojo. Right now, we're currently closed due to the pandemic, so we decided let's continue our lightning talks virtually. We thought this would be a great experience and time to try out Clubhouse and to invite more broader community, and then also expand, just not to be super hyper technical, but also more inclusive to other parts that affect the startup realm, the project realm. And that's why we're focusing on today, discussions with angel VCs and also building your brand. I think this is, once you get your project up and running, these are very, very critical parts of your project. That being said, I'll hand it over to Steph for the introductions.
Thank you, Ed. As you may know, Ed is our executive director of Hacker Dojo, and I'm Stephanie, the community manager of Hacker Dojo. And thank you so much, Angel and Mike, for agreeing to speak in our lightning talk today. Today we have two speakers, and our first speaker will be Angel Gambino. She a Wired Top 100 angel investor, and the second speaker will be Mike Frasset. He's a Tiny sponsor co-founder. So again, thank you so much for being with us here today. And just to reset the room a little bit, so our talk will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. And if you have any question for the speaker, please wait until the speaker finishes their talk, and you can click the icon of raise your hand, and then we will bring you to the stage. So that being said, let me leave the stage for our first speaker for today, Angel. Angel has invested in over 100 startups that make people and world healthier and a happier place, and she has a special focus on underrepresented founders. And she's here with us today to talk about an angel investor view on early stage startup. So without further ado, the stage is yours, Angel.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Stephanie. And yeah, I'll keep it brief at the beginning because I would like to give Mike as much opportunity to talk as he would like, and also because I think it would be great to just answer any questions, Stephanie, that you or that that Ed oftentimes get, and I can address those questions. But I think one of the first things that that I would share is a lot of times I think we, as founders, and I've been a serial entrepreneur in the U.S., the U.K., and Latin America, a lot of times, we get very excited about the things that we're building. And sometimes in the process of getting excited about what we're building and building up that enthusiasm and passion and almost obsession, sometimes we can focus a little too much on the product itself. So when we're developing early stage technology businesses, we're trying to solve big problems in really novel and scalable ways. And sometimes that means that we fall in love with our baby, and the baby oftentimes is the product as opposed to the business. And so, because that's, the kind of core manifestation or whatever everything kind of hinges on. But really, from an angel investor standpoint, I feel like it's made me a better entrepreneur, and I feel like being an entrepreneur has made me a better angel investor. That's not always true for VCs. There are some amazing VCs who have never been operators. But, but I think that has to do with, falling in love with the problem as opposed to the product. And so, so I love when I see founders and entrepreneurs at really every stage. But I invest early stage. But I love to see the ones that fall in love with solving big problems and big problems that exist within big markets. And the reason I make the distinction between the problem and the product is because, so often the product changes radically over time. And if we overcommit to one kind of product roadmap, then even if we're using a kind of agile approach to product development, sometimes we can get overly fixated on that product and that product roadmap when it might not end up being the best solution to the problem that we aim to solve. So, there can be a lot of social pressures, involved with utilizing different, tools, techniques, platforms, to be able to kind of showcase our talent as teams. But I think when we are most passionate about solving the problems, it allows us the adaptability to be able to make sure that we're really going to the heart of what the problem is and creating solutions that become scalable businesses. So, solutions that are scalable businesses, oftentimes have a suite of products and, a suite of features and a whole host of different capabilities that, that allow us to kind of build and further iterate, over time. So from an investor standpoint, I'll give a specific example. So, and this one is actually outside of tech, but it's just one of my most recent investments. So, in addition to early stage tech, I also invest in cannabis and psychedelics. So, I recently invested in a company called MindBloom, and MindBloom are offering kind of assisted medicinal therapy with ketamine and at-home delivery. This is also a Peter Thiel investment, and there are a lot of other kind of interesting investors in that business. And in part, for me, I'm not very interested in ketamine as a therapy itself. It's I don't even know that much about that particular medicine. But I really love to learn more and to see mental health being addressed and treated in a very scalable way. And so for me, I'm looking at investment opportunities that look at a full range of mental health issues and the problem of poor mental health globally in a variety of different ways. And so with this particular business, they're, because of the highly regulatory framework that this business operates in, they are looking at one of the easiest ways to get to market with this particular product. But the grand vision, so this is, you could say, their MVP version, but their grand vision, is much more expansive and much more impactful. And so, they're not just committed to this one product or this one aspect of the business. They're really looking at, this is the kind of easiest way in, given the regulatory framework. And there are less risks in kind of, taking this particular approach. But what they're really interested in is the full range of possibilities, the full range of solutions that might be created by this team in order to improve, mental health for millions and millions of people, in the U.S. first, and then in other markets. And I would say that that's probably, similar to, for example, Row, which is a telehealth business in our Prehype portfolio, where Prehype is a venture studio where I'm a partner. And Row just raised, they just announced this week that they raised $500 million at a $5 billion valuation. Now, the team, my partners in Prehype, when they were first looking at, that business, it was really around helping men with erectile dysfunction. They had something called doorknob appointments. So men would have appointments with their GP, their doctors, and they wouldn't mention anything about these issues that they were having because, they felt ashamed, they felt embarrassed, and these were their doctors that they had for many years. And so as they were leaving, their appointments, they would say, oh, and by the way, I've been having this issue. I'm sure it's not a big deal, but I thought I should just, mention it. And that would be like as they were leaving. And so they would call it these doorknob appointments because, it was when they were reaching for the door to leave that they actually addressed the problem that they had. And so, so with Row, they fell in love with, with the problem of really making sure that people get optimal health treatment and prescriptions in a way that is more receptive to the people that are trying to seek treatment, right? So, so looking at, and they would articulate it, much better than I would, and they were just on here a couple days ago kind of telling their story, but starting off with erectile dysfunction and an online assessment so that they didn't have to go into the doctors and have these conversations with other human beings where they felt embarrassed. Having that online assessment and then at-home delivery meant that many more people were getting treated, and many people, had improvements in their health. And so, now they've expanded into, lots of other areas, including, menopause for women and a whole host of things. They're doing at-home vaccines and at-home tests for COVID now. And so I think, falling in love with that bigger problem of how do you make healthcare more accessible and especially more affordable to those people who don't have health insurance, is that bigger problem that they fell in love with. And so they made sure that they had a kind of MVP and really focused in a narrow way in solving that problem in a very niche way, and niche also still being a big market, by the way. But then building on that to solve, the bigger problem. So, so I guess, my offer for today is from an angel standpoint, I would say I love first and foremost teams, right? At an angel investor stage, what we're most looking for are very, very talented teams. And, that team can include, co-founders, that team can include investors, mentors, advisors, looking at the whole package, so to speak. But, I mean, David Cohen at Techstars often says it's team. And I would agree with that. He also, follows on with progress and market. But, and then ideas last, just to emphasize that it's last. So I think, as a Techstars mentor and as an angel investor, at those early stages, most interested in seeing teams that have very complementary skill sets, but also have unfair advantage in terms of insights into these problems that they're trying to solve or opportunities that they're trying to realize. Those unique insights can come from personal experience, but they can also come from, working in that sector or working in particular areas where they've seen problems and potential solutions that other people, might not have seen. But the construction of that team is really, really important, because you want, you have so few resources at the earlier stages that you want to see that any additional team member is a multiplier of X, a multiplier of 10. It's not just one additional person. That additional person is able to bring so much more to the team. And so having those unique insights, having complementary skill sets, having a passion for that problem, as opposed to purely about the product is I think critical, because during, the lifespan of a startup, you're going to find that, each stage there are a whole host of complications, any of which could kill a business at any stage, or at least get you to the point as a founder that you just want to walk away. You're losing your sanity, you're losing your sleep, you're losing friends and family members because, you're so focused on this startup. And, and then there are other challenges even with success of the business, in terms of getting the right kinds of terms, avoiding predatory, term sheets, or board members who can remove you from your position, even if you're CEO. So there are a whole host of challenges along the way. So, from an angel investor standpoint, I'm looking really, really for that strong team. If you've got prior experience as a startup founder, even better. Not required, but it's always great, so that somebody has been through that journey, has the kind of, battle scars to show, and they get some of the key elements that it takes to build a successful, startup, even if a prior one has failed. And in fact, sometimes it's an advantage, not a disadvantage. And so, so I think I would just say that, beyond, looking at teams from a functional skill set, having teams that are so passionate about these problems that they're not going to walk away when they hit any of these kind of problems, and also they care so much about the problem that they want to create a massive company, not just get out at the first acquisition potential conversation that comes their way, because they will come. If you're building a successful and scalable business, they will come. And as an angel investor, I don't want a founder who's going to take that first offer to acquire their company just so they can get out and they can, make a few $1 million. I want somebody who's going to want to build that up into a multi-billion-dollar company. So somebody who's really passionate about the problems that they're solving and really passionate about creating a big business is the kind of team that, that I want to invest in. And so, I hope that that's helpful just in terms of, giving some perspective, because I think even, there are situations where I would invest outside of my sector or outside of my geography, if I think that team is so incredibly strong that I can't walk away from them, that I absolutely want to see them win. And for me, I also, proactively, seek out underestimated founders. And I do that because I want more diversity and equity in the world, but I also do it because those founders typically outperform, their counterparts. So, purely from a mercenary investor standpoint, those are wise investments to make. So, so that's kind of the angle that I come at these new investments with. And I hope that that's helpful in terms of understanding, some of the key elements in looking for that right founder investor fit. Angel, I'm done speaking.
Oh, thank you. That was a lot of gems right there. That was amazing.
I hope it wasn't too long.
No, not at all. We're still good on time. What I wanted to do is also kind of dig deep into the optics of an angel investor, and also kind of giving maybe some tips to future angel investors. At early stage, you're at the highest risk, right? Can you speak on, if you could, some of the tips or warning signs of when you're the earliest parts of engaging a new founder, or sourcing. How do you source your future investments? Do you have people who help you do technical due diligence? And then the last part of it, and when you're engaging a relationship with a new founders, how involved does an angel investor become? So those are kind of the three: sourcing, doing due diligence, and then the relationship. How does that evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's different for different angel investors. So I don't want to speak on behalf of all of them. There are some general rule of thumb, but in terms of sourcing, so part of the reason I do a daily fundraising room, and some of my co-moderators are here with us and would be great to comment as well. But in that daily fundraising room, I do that partly to be of service to other founders. It's something I wish I had, when I was starting up any of my companies, not even just the first one, but at other stages. But it's also because I thought it was a good way for me as an angel investor to get myself out there so that other founders, know who I am and potentially, expand or diversify my deal flow. So one of the ways that angel investors, or at least I source deals is, primarily through my relationships. So I invest directly into founders, and I'm very connected to a pretty wide network of founders. So founders will introduce me to other founders who are fundraising. Some of the deals come to me via social media. So I try to be as active as I can on social media so that deals will flow through directly to me. I also invest alongside other investors. So sometimes investors will put together SPVs or syndicates, and they'll lead an angel investment with other angel investors. And so a lot of times other investors will reach out to me and say, hey, I'm in on this deal. I think it fits your thesis. Do you want to meet the founder? So a lot of deals either come from founders that I have, worked with in some capacity before, investors that I have either co-invested with before or who just know what I like, and so they'll send stuff my way. The other way is through social media, and so direct outreach. And then finally, I am an active investor in other platforms and syndicates like FJ Labs and the Syndicate and other channels where there's regular deal flow. So those are some of the ways that I kind of source deal flow. And in terms of due diligence, again, it really depends. I mean, there have been some deals that I've done with no due diligence at all, except for getting some reference checks on the founders. It's just I've fallen in love with the team. I've fallen in love with the problem that they're solving. I think that there's a big market potential, or at least I see a big market for that particular business. So some of them can be very, very quick turnaround. That's not the norm, but that does happen. And sometimes investors are fighting over deals. So sometimes there's an element of social proof, right? So sometimes if I see, for example, it's a marketplace deal, and Fabrice Grinda, who's one of my co-investors, who I've been co-investing with for over 20 years, I think, somewhere around there. I know that if he has done a marketplace deal, that he, and I'll ask him, but I usually don't even have to ask him because I know how he goes about it. I will ask if, he and his team have done, the due diligence, and his team in marketplaces are incredibly numbers oriented, and they are expert in marketplaces. So I know if it's a marketplace deal, I am gonna, and they're in it. I already know, because I've been through it with some of our co-investments, the rigor that they use in their due diligence. And so oftentimes I will use them for my due diligence on marketplaces. And a lot of investors will do that. They will rely on other investors for certain aspects of due diligence. Not the whole thing, but for certain aspects or for certain sectors. So, the other way that I go about it is, yes, I have a team of advisors that I use when I evaluate deals to help me with due diligence. And that can be almost any aspect. That can be, the technical due diligence. It can be, legal, if it's a highly regulated market. It can be various different aspects of due diligence when I'm looking. I have a team of advisors that I use to look at those deals where I either need the extra help or I feel a little unsure, and I get permission from the founder before I share those. So I'll say, can I share this, with my advisors? They're not going to share it, beyond just us. And if they say yes, then I share it and we talk about that deal. Sometimes it's a quick email and they say, I would pass on this one if I was you. This is why. Or, here are some questions that you want to ask. That's what they'll say to me. Or they'll say, I think this is really strong and this is why. And so, so yes, I rely on key people that I trust in different types of investments. But it really, it really does just depend, because some deals get so competitive that you don't even have time. You're lucky to even get in there, because the momentum around closing that round can be extremely fast, and sometimes it requires really quick turnaround. So again, it kind of depends, but I do rely on, for example, one of the guys that I used for my tech due diligence, was a former CTO for one of my startups, and he's just phenomenal. So he's my go-to. And if he's busy, I have a list of other people that I go to. So yes, we definitely, look to our wider network for all aspects of sourcing deals, and also, direct relationships. I love it when founders come to me and they say, look, this is what I'm working on. I'm not here to pitch you, but I love what you're doing. And I just, I wanted to, start building a relationship with you. I love that, because then I can get to know them over time. But, and for the tech due diligence side, just making sure that everyone knows like what information you're sharing, and getting those permissions first, I think is important. And so, clarifying that if you're sending something to an angel investor, you can say, please do not, share this, or ask for my permission, before you share it with anyone. That's an important part of it. Angel, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, Angel. Appreciate it. The lightning talks, we can have people raise their hands if they have questions for a speaker. I would love to carry that tradition here in Clubhouse. So, Steph, you're the moderator. Do we have any raised hands? Any questions for Angel?
So we
can probably take one or two.
Yeah, so because we are running out of time, and I know that we have a lot of questions for Angel, and we have another speaker after this. So I think we'll only have like one time for 1 or 2 questions. So I would begin with the people who raise their hand first. So I have a question for Power TVs. I will bring you onto stage, okay?
Yeah, I would just say if anyone else has questions, I'm happy to answer questions on Twitter as well later, so we can make sure Mike's got enough time.
I didn't really have a question, but we are right now in Hollywood, California, and we have about, I think, 5 new brands that are starting up now. We're reaching out to a few investors this week. Do you all have any tips on your first contact with investors email letter?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. You have an email newsletter and you want to get investors subscribing to it? Can you clarify the question?
No, we're just sending out a first contact email saying, hey, how are you?
Okay.
This is us. This is what we're doing. We have a couple projects. Do you see anything that might interest you?
Got it. Okay. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. What I would say is, a lot of times when entrepreneurs are fundraising, they'll use what I call, and what others call, a spray and pray, or pray and spray. And that basically means it's just like a mass email blast to anyone who's got the, title investor in their LinkedIn profile. I would highly encourage you to not do that. What I would say is, first come up with your ideal investor profile. And for you, you said you've got a number of different brands. I don't know if those are CPG brands or media brands, but, I would look at who would make a good investor. And those are different depending on what kind of business you have. So for somebody working in, for example, media brands, you're going to want an investor who says that that's what they invest in, and that takes some research to do. There's lots of lists. I constantly tweet out lists of investors, and other investors share them as well. And you can do some online research. There's something called NFX Signal. There's also Crunchbase Pro. I'm trying to think of some of there's OpenBC. In angelclub.com, I've got one that I've been, an investors database I've been building up over the last 20 years. And so you're going to want to look at those lists and then look at the people that invest in your particular sector, the people that invest in your particular stage. So, if you're raising your first round, you want to know that these are people that come in the first round. If you are raising in the US, you want to make sure that you've got a geography match. And then I would say, in addition to that, you want to make sure that there's going to be a good chemistry or personality kind of match. You won't necessarily know that straight out of the gate. Sometimes it's going to, with that initial email, really what you're trying to get to is just, entice them enough to want to have at least a 15-minute call or a half-hour call, or at least respond to your email. Investors get, I'm getting right now a few hundred pitches a week, so I can't respond to all of them right away. Sometimes I can get to them all in 1 week, and sometimes I can't. And so just know that if you don't get a response, it is okay to follow up, but you should make sure, and Stephen, who's down here, says something often in our fundraising room, which is make sure that the subject line, it doesn't have to be clickbaity. You don't want it to be clickbaity, but you want it to say what it is in a way that makes me want to open that email, right? And so the first hurdle that you've got is, getting that investor profile done, getting your investor target list done. I suggest making sure you've got 100 people on your list, because the vast majority of them are going to be no's. Then making sure that email is highly customized, highly personalized. It's going to take a lot of time. You are not going to cut and paste each template email. You are not going to do that. You might have one paragraph that's that, but you are going to tailor it. I see, Angel, that you just invested in MindBloom. I think, it's amazing because we're actually creating this whole ketamine brand, and, this is who it's targeting. This is what we're doing. And, we're actually raising a round to build up this brand. This is going to give us 12 to 18 months runway. This is the team, yada, yada. But it's going to be super concise. All you're trying to do is get to a response, and be clear about what you're asking for. Are you asking for a 15-minute phone call? Are you asking for a response in your email? Be clear about what you're asking for. Make sure that subject line is something that makes me want to open that email. Be no more than 3 paragraphs. If you've got a 1-page investor memo that you want to send a link via DocSend, that allows you to track it. Or if you've got a deck that you want to send with a link, that's also okay. You don't have to send that in the first one, but you can. And just make sure that you're really, making it contextual so that I understand, why are you sending me the email as opposed to any other of the thousands of investors that are out there? Because if I feel like you're just being generic with me and you haven't invested the time to craft an email, then you're certainly not getting my money. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much. And I sent you something on Twitter. Please send us those lists when you're tweeting them out.
Yep, I will tweet them out for sure. And you can also check out angelclub.com. But you can look directly yourself at NFX Signal, and you can look at OpenVC. Those are pretty comprehensive lists. Or Crunchbase Pro also has one. Crunchbase you have to pay for. The other two you do not. Angel, I'm done.
Thank you, Angel. And we understand that we have a lot of questions for Angel. We will if you want to follow any of our moderator and speaker for today, just click on their bio and you will have the option to follow them, and you will see a way to contact them. And Angel have and like she mentioned, she have a Angel Club on Clubhouse where she hosts a lot of event on there too. So if you can have any question, please feel free to follow Angel. And thank you so much, Angel, for your talk today. It's a lot of information, and I believe that it very useful and beneficial to people in the room. So thank you so much, Angel. And
thank you for having me.
thank you, Angel. And for our next speaker, thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Our second speaker, Mike Frasad, he's a tiny sponsor co-founder, and he has played key roles in multiple startup ecosystem globally. He has worked with and advised startups from Y Combinator, from Idea Lab, 500 Startup, and others. And I believe his latest work is a co-founder for Koji BBQ. And he's here with us today to talk about building your digital launch strategy, a fast framework. And without further ado, Mike, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Angel, I love everything you said. You touch upon a lot of topics. It brings you back to my days when I was doing running Accelerator and an early stage incubator, and the angles we work with and the investment we made. It was really comprehensive, so it was a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I just checked out Open VC. I didn't know that existed. It didn't exist back in the day for me. So,
no, I know. I just learned about that one actually in the last couple of weeks because they pinged me and they said, hey, can you let people know about it? And I took a look at it and I was like, wow, it's pretty comprehensive. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great resource. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about essentially looking at the beginnings of branding for your startup or marketing in general. I'm looking at where everyone talks about the importance of brand and your product messaging and the use cases and your audience, all these things. But what I want to try and do here today is explain and hopefully give you a framework of how to connect them together and look at how each layer builds upon itself. My background, relevant background in space is I've worked with startups across almost most major Silicon Valley accelerators, helping them grow, growth hack or whatever terminology you want to call it, but basically launch successfulully and stack that deck in their favor using marketing content and all the tools that you have at your disposal, and not necessarily being restricted to a necessary budget. I think a lot of people think, if I throw money at Facebook ads or if I throw money at whatever ad, if I'm raising money from VCs, I'll be successful. And I think that's great, and that's not untrue, but it isn't always the most efficient way to launch your startup. And if you're just doing that, you're actually doing a disservice to both yourself, your community, your customers, and your investors. So I also run Marketing Club on Clubhouse. We're in top 10 club globally on Clubhouse, and we lead talks every week. And so a lot of this is stuff that we talk about there. And so starting out, I want to start out with the idea of the MVP when it comes to marketing. And the MVP when it comes to marketing is your brand. Your brand is a thing that, honestly, I think most startups fall upon it from a passion point of view, but don't think of it from a strategic point of view. And your brand is very much the MVP because it's the thing that is the most used, the most ubiquitous, the thing that has little to no cost after it's established, because you use it all the time, repeat it, it's copied all the time in all your engagement points. But it's also the thing that is commonly the first thing that your customer or potential customer engages with. And so the idea here is the brand is the most utilized messaging unit in all of your marketing. And when you want to think about that, when you think about the visuals, you think about the values, you think about what does it convey. And I personally have a penchant for literal brand. So like my company is called, that I started, my startup is called Tiny Sponsor. It's about sponsorship for small creators. And we've grown to actually cover all categories. But the idea is when we started, our specific audience was small creators and sponsorship. And so it's a very literal name, but you can hear it and know nothing about the company, but you have an idea of what we do. And it's enough for you to say, hey, I actually think this is relevant to me. Let me go look for more. And the same type of approach is what you want to apply to the name and also the visual of the brand. So you think about it from that point of view. You're trying to get someone on first engagement to say, I do want to learn more. You're not trying to sell them on the first engagement. You're just trying to get them to make the effort to do more. You want to get over that initial friction and give them enough to get to a decision point. And so on a name point of view, you can go literal in the case of Tiny Sponsor. You could also go something that's more cultural. So when I did Kogi Barbecue, the name Kogi was a version of bulgogi, which is fire meat. And we did this Korean barbecue tacos. And in that scenario, gogi means meat. So if you're Korean, you would recognize roughly what it was about. And if you were not Korean, Kogi barbecue, you would instantly understand that it was something to do with some type of ethnic barbecue, because Kogi would sound ethnic, but not necessarily something that is something you can't remember. It was really important that we made it 2 syllables, easy to pronounce. Someone who wasn't ethnic in that Korean culture would still be able to understand it, hear it, and repeat it, because they can't share it if they can't do that. And so you can also go on a values basis. And so that could be something where you're talking about, like Mind Bloom. I think was interesting what kind of Angel mentioned earlier, is this idea of like the bigger idea behind how it engages a person and what it does. And then it doesn't explain what they actually do, but it's interesting and says, oh, this is something I might be interested in expanding my mind and in maybe mental health. It conveys those values and that overall experience in the name. And so you really want your brand to encompass those things at first engagement. And then the visual side of it should reflect the same type of strategy. So if you think about the visuals, I always analogize to walking into a really lovely high-end chocolate shop. When you walk into a nice chocolate shop, you see a display, you see all these different chocolates. And at first glance, you actually don't know what's inside of them. You don't know, there's 30 varieties of chocolates and little like bonbons and whatever, but you don't know what's inside them. But the thing you do know is that they look delicious, and you want to taste them, you want to learn more, you want to experience them, without knowing exactly what's inside of each one. And so a brand should be the same way. It should be something you look at, it's memorable, it's iconic, it's purpose-driven. And this is when you go into the colors, you go into the shapes, and you can be super explicit about this. So for example, with Kogi Barbecue, the logo is a charcoal, slightly ethnic font. So when you look at it, the charcoal is a key into the idea of barbecue. It looks a little bit ethnic, so it plays into this idea of accessible cultural experience. And then the colors we use these 2 flame icons. It's basically the same icon layered. So it's a little flame icon that is literally iconic, because it is literally an icon. And it's orange and red, and we layered it to make it a little more unique. Stacked it, so it's the Kogi with a flame on top of it. And we use the colors because those are common colors in the industry that are convey hunger. So every fast food brand you can think of uses variations of typically orange, yellow, and red, because those are things that the industry spent money on associating with hunger. If you look at things in tech, for example, if you look at B2B corporate SaaS tech, or IBM and all these other companies have spent decades and billions of dollars branding the idea of a certain shade of blue, creating trust and security. And each color has a meaning by applicable to its industry, and you can inherit some of that meaning. So the trick is to essentially take elements of what the industry norms are, but then adapt them in a unique way to differentiate yourself. And so you can go very literal, and you can go very functional. You can also go way more refined and creative, but the idea is the fundamental tactics in the communication should really be uniform and consistent. So that's an importance of the brand, and I stress so much that people skip over this so much. Now, the next step of that is your product differentiator in this overall framework for kind of getting to a successful digital launch. So product differentiator is like saying, okay, your product can do many, many things, and many people are passionate about this really big idea, but when you launch, you can only do 1 or 2 things right. And so you got to say, what is that thing that I do right and that I do really, really well, and who does it have the highest value to, and what is that explicit differentiator? If I'm a coffee shop, why is my coffee shop different? And you really have to explicitly understand that and be able to communicate that very simply. And those are a lot of things that Angel was saying. And then based on that, figure out what are out of all the dozen use cases that you can think of, what is the use case that displays and visibly presents your differentiator the best? And you'll find that'll be a very specific use case for a very specific audience at a very specific value point in a very specific scenario. And you'll probably build out, let's say, like 3 to 5 of those use cases. You'll figure out these are the ones that we really focus on right now. And most people stop there. They're just like, okay, cool, I'm going to go after these 5 audiences, or maybe 2 audiences, or these really big audiences. Because VCs will say, hey, listen, I want to see the biggest applicable market size. I want to know what your your TAM, your total addressable market is, and that's great in a big picture view. But when you get to your launch, you really got to segment. And so we go into segmentation. So if you look at any general, mid-size, or larger audience, most people stop and say, okay, I'm targeting, let's say, millennial women in big cities. Okay, that's a decently sized audience. It is a little more specific than, broadly speaking, women in general, let's say. But you can actually break that down. You can say, okay, of millennial women in big cities, you can break that down into 3 to 5 or 7 sub-audiences that are more precise. You can have women who are single parents, women who are in the suburban setting, women who are more active in let's say, like health and wellness, for example. And you can segment them out into like any audience, you can segment into 3 to 7 specific subsegments. And what I do then in this framework is that we take those subsegments, we say, great, what is their day-to-day like? What are the things that they struggle with every single day? What are the challenges they face every single day? And where does our key product differentiator and our key use case fit into that explicitly? Where there's a really, really high value. And then for each of those scenarios, where do those women in this example engage with the things that affect their day-to-day the most? So each of them are going to have, each audience is going to have a channel that they go to more than the other for a certain thing that's applicable to your specific use case. So for certain things, that might be Pinterest. For other things, it might be Facebook, if it's a very personal or a community-driven thing. For other things, it might be an e-commerce site like Amazon. Or it could be something in the real world. Maybe they go to a community center, for example. So you need to understand where these not just like who the sub-audiences are, but really explicitly, where do they engage for the need that they're trying to solve, or the vertical or the type of service that they're trying that affects them on a day-to-day basis? Where is that information coming from? And once you know all of this, then you can go into actually building your campaign. And then this is what I call the circle of shiny. It's kind of my variation of the sales circle. Well, Circle of Shiny says that, okay, the first thing you've got to do is for this very specific audience, and your very specific use case, and this very specific channel that you know that this is where they look for the solutions for this problem set that you're trying to solve for. What is the shiny? What is the thing that they're passionate about or interesting or will catch their eye? And so everyone has their shiny thing. Like, for example, I am really into food. I'm really into tech gadgets. I'm really into like this idea of science as it affects like macrobiological problems. So it's passion of mine. It's nothing to do with my business. It's something I'm really into. I read a lot about. For some people, like the guy I friend who's really into sneakers. He's a big sneakerhead. So everyone has their shiny. What you got to figure out is what is the shiny as it relates to your product or your service that this audience really cares about, that they're really passionate about. And the idea here is that it's not that shiny could be your product. with Kobe barbecue, it was the idea of a Korean barbecue taco. That foodies were super into this idea of this is a new fusion thing, I want to try it. But for other people, it may not be the product or service you do, it may be adjacent. It may be something, so for example, let's say in the Kogi barbecue example, a lot of our target audience were really into cultural art experiences. And so we partnered with art galleries to do and we would pop up launches during our launch period. Because that was our shiny, but we were adjacent to that because the values in this cultural experience was also part of our food experience. But you can identify the shiny. The shiny will bring that first person in. And this will be a very specific type of customer. The shiny catches their attention. It brings them in. And then when it does, and then at that point you go, okay, how do I minimize the friction from when the shiny catches their attention to them getting into my conversion funnel? How do I really get them to engage with the brand, get an idea of what it is, and want to continue further down that pathway into a customer experience, like into the point of sale? And then, again, most people stop at the point of sale. They go, oh, I sold you. You're my customer now. I'm done. And that's not true. Because ultimately, and this is critical for new startups, is that you're not just selling a product or a service. You're building a community and a culture. That's what actually allows a small startup with limited resources to scale out to be a phenomenon. Without that community and culture driving your growth is linked to how quickly you can fill out the problem. And even then you can still fail because we don't do it right. When you find shiny, you meet someone and you meet a customer and you say, great, what was that customer experience? Did I make them feel special? Did I add a little element of surprise? Did I make it notable? Or is it just buying something on Amazon? Part of the thing that I do every day. Or is it, but if I've targeted my customer right, and I figured out the segment right, and I understand why my product is so critical, so that they're really passionate or a big solution, a big problem set that they have, then potentially my product has a big impact on their life in this specific use case. So how do I further make that customer feel more valued? And not just value, but how do I feel engaged with my brand as if they're part of it, not just a customer, but someone that is part of a small experience, an intimate experience that affects their day-to-day. In that scenario, this is where the experience of both the purchasing and the post-purchase experience becomes critical. You can do things like a little thing like setting a note, or adding in one of my other products, Coffee Bar, which is a caffeine and protein bar. Your first box you buy comes with a bag that we say this is a reusable bag. It's part of one of our values of being environmentally friendly. You can save it. It's branded with our iconography, and there's a little card on it that is printed. It's actually not. We don't sign them, but it's a little note. So thank you for supporting a small business, and talking about the values that we espouse. And the idea here is that we're not actually. And then there's a signature it's printed, but then we do a spot you get makes it shiny. And people often think that we've actually signed it when we haven't. But it makes that first experience feel memorable. And what we find that people then will take that, they'll photograph the bag, they'll tag it, they'll tell their friends about it, they'll keep it on their desk, and that becomes a trigger for them to share it. That creation, that engagement that they do, is so shiny for their friends. And then that brings their friends into our purchase or experience funnel. And then that actually why we call it Circle Shiny, because it's taking a key customer base, a key target, creating an amazing experience, creating a trigger point that activates them to create a new shiny for someone else. And that's scale, and that creates virality. And that's where you get a small company that has outsized engagement, outsized growth through these very tactical decision-making processes. And after you've done all this, then you start looking at your channels, and it's more in tandem. You look at all the channels, all your points of engagement. Make sure that, like, if you're going to do Instagram, you're going to do like paid ads, for example. Let's make sure that those channels and those content areas don't just do a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad and not have a good Instagram account. And then you guys say, great, for my Instagram account, does my content mix, my 3 to 5 posts a week, coincide with the values and the narrative and the experience of all of it that we just talked about, in the brand, in the product differentiator? How is it explicitly structured? And how is that segmented to content buckets that repeat to create cohesion so that that same type of secondary experience is in line with the direct experiences that we just talked about earlier? And all of this, what it does is it creates a very explicit funnel. It optimizes and repeats the customer experience to different degrees and allows it to scale across all these external channels that feed back to a key point of conversion where you have your KPIs. And at that point, with measurement in place, you can start throwing money at it. You can start thinking, now that I have all of this, I have this really great, an assembly line, a funnel, it's a factory at this point. Then you're actually adding fuel. You're pouring money. You can buy ads to hit new audiences and throw them into this experience, and you refine it and you scale it. But most people are jumped to that second part, and I think my point here with this framework is that the first part is actually the most critical. If you don't do the first part right, throwing money at it, buying more ads, optimizing your Facebook ads, that's all secondary, because ultimately it ends up in the same place. And if where they end up isn't done right, you're essentially throwing most of your money away. And so this is something that so many companies, big and small, make the mistake of. And so going on a little longer than I intended. So I hope that was useful. I know this is a very, very fast lightning round here in terms of the foundations and a fast framework for branding and marketing. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I totally agree that it's very important to understand what a customer want and need before you actually working on, like the marketing plan. So here that a lot of people want to have questions, and we let's begin with the first one first. And Aslak, I see that you have a question. I hope that I pronounced your name correctly. I will bring you into the stage, okay?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Mike and Angel, for the really, really valuable information. So I'm trying to kind of put this in from a context perspective. So I'm working with a COVID-19 test and vaccination certificate solution. We got some funding from the European Union to deliver for hospital in Spain. And we're trying to figure out, and our best resellers are basically laboratories who want the test centers and clinics to start using our system because it's secure and it creates a very good flow for the whole ecosystem of the situation where you get tested, and the situation when the lab receives the test, and then the situation when it's reported into our system, and then it goes out to the end user, which is residents or citizens. So to that point, I'm kind of struggling around what you're talking about, kind of the experience funnel, how that kind of plays into something like that. So trying to figure out those kinds of, how to actually implement things that you're talking about. So we're a very tech savvy group, people from Google and so forth. But when it comes to marketing, that's something where we're quite lacking, actually. So those are kind of the things I'm trying to put my head around, where are kind of the key touch points for creating, as you said, a viral, what was the word, shining spiral or something like that?
A circle of shining, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So in this case, you have this product, but you're primarily selling through other businesses.
Yeah, it's a B2B. That's right. It's a B2B, and in a sense, they get the citizens and residents, they get a health wallet from us, where they can collect all their. There's kind of a reach there, of course. They can, and we've thought about creating maybe kind of a marketplace for lab tests, where they can find all kinds of tests. The labs who work with us, basically, or even those who don't. Kind of a list of labs where you can get yourself tested. It's kind of a next step for us that we're considering, but we're not sure we want to take that route yet. But yeah, sure. Anyways. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so essentially your touch points here, like you're relying on a B2B, so you're B2B2C essentially, right? So you're relying on the laboratories to say, hey, use this to track and share your information and validate, your status and whatnot, or get resources. And so in that case, and we do this with our resellers, you really want to make sure that you provide them with very easy to use materials, landing pages, whatever, that they can just make it easy to then push their customers into your funnel. So in this case, they might say, hey, if you a handful of labs, like create a branded landing page that introduces the customer into a funnel to download the app or use it in a way that you control, and you can manage and optimize. You could also go into, so let's say a physical product, like then your packaging becomes an engagement point that you can then create triggers when those labs resell, because say there's a kit, for example. And then also, obviously, once they get into your app, there's the onboarding experience there that you have options to do. And so there's that, and there's a secondary thing you can do with your content channels as your brand, which is establish your brand as the definitive or the trusted source of validation for what it's providing, right?
Yeah, we've heard that.
And that's a
actually,
content play. Yeah.
Yeah, our labs are talking about that. And also actually, some of the labs have their own kind of certificates, but they're seeing that it's kind of, they want a third party, as you said, like a trusted party. Yeah. And so that we've noticed that interest actually, but we're still kind of thinking about how to create this trusted brand in a sense.
Well, and the trick is to make it essentially give it like a sort of a certification visual, right? So you see this with restaurants, for example. If you get like a Zagat or a Yelp top review, there's a little sticker that you put on the window that they give the restaurant, and that actually promotes Yelp as an authority. But really, it's a restaurant who are essentially giving that authority. There was a brand that I worked with a long time ago called Fatality, and he's a pro gamer, and he was the first official pro gamer. Got really huge a long time ago, and as he retired, the licensors were like, "How do we make his brand still perform when he's not competing?" And so the program I created for them was study of Fatality certified. And essentially, we made a little cool seal, and we made a cool holographic sticker that all of their hardware partners who made creative labs and all these different hardware made speakers and mice, computer mice, could say, okay, if you meet this certain level of specification, we'll give you, and you pay us, we'll give you the fatality certified sticker. It goes in every single box and every single, and it's a little third-party validation that this product is made for gamers. And that actually ended up making more money over the course of the company than anything that was made when he was still performing, because it scaled.
Yeah. We've seen like, it's just enough to have basically right now, and if you have a secure QR code, and we built this, digital audit trail. We've worked with blockchain before, but and we've seen that as long as you have created that kind of authenticity with the brand, and like the image-wise, we're still struggling a little to create that. But for now, we're just we're competing against paper versions of a certificate. So it's, for us, there's also the situation where you have the border control agents looking at the paper, comparing it to the digital version, and saying, well, in my head, digital is easier to hack than this paper, but which is actually not true. And also sometimes people pull out some PDFs on their emails, which is also really easy to change.
Super easy to, yeah, exactly.
It's just kind of it's just the users. It's a struggle because the user, there's two end users. There's the end user, the customer, will trust it because they got tested, but then there's the other end user where they need to verify it. And there we've created like a QR code that you can basically use any system to verify. So there's sort of this trust system that we need to, bang into everyone.
And to kind of wrap up, because I don't know if we have time for questions or anything else we need to do, but please feel free to hit me, directly DM me or email me. It's on my profile, because this is a fascinating kind of problem set. Sure. But there's cues you can do in the interaction. So let's say that like there's a QR code, right? And that loads up on like the agent's mobile screen to verify status.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of just loading up the screen and saying, and it just loads up a report that says, yes, they're verified, you can literally purposefully add a little loading animation that is like says verifying and checking it, and creates this idea that, oh, it's actually doing something versus just displaying an image. And
we have that already, but
purely for show, right? But the little cues like that you can use to psychologically make it feel more comprehensive, even though it still is exactly the same thing, but in that experience layer that you can do as well.
Okay, thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it. I'm done.
Thank you, Aslak. We're gonna move along to the next question. It's for Will, and we have room for one more after Will. So we can. We're gonna start wrapping up. Hi, Will. Oh, and
hey,
by the way, welcome. I see you guys have the new celebration cones. Welcome to Clubhouse.
Hey, Ed. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been. I've only been on since Monday. It's been really, really productive. So, yeah. Hey, Angel, I just wanted to say first, before I ask my question, I've been sort of hanging out in a lot of the rooms that you've been in, and it's been really helpful and insightful, so thank you for that. I guess my question is, so we validated our market pretty well, but we've gotten some feedback in our deck from a couple angels that potentially the way that we're portraying our projections and margins is bringing skepticism. So I guess my question is about if you've identified a market where there seems to be like really good potential margins and high revenues, how you show that to VCs without seeming like misleading or leaving out potential problems in the process.
So first of all, thank you for that feedback. Well, doing it, so thank you. And I'm kind of going into a dead zone here to pick up my son from school. So if I cut out, then please do feel free to come to the fundraising room, Monday to Friday at noon Pacific. My profile. But the short of it is, if you're getting a couple of things. One is hearing, because they might have insights that you don't have. The other part that I would say is that, you can point out what the market is that big, then find the if you are finding you're getting pushback or skepticism around your ability to a certain portion of the market, then you'll really need to make sure that your plan is robust. But it's okay to say, look, these are our assumptions. Our next phase is about validating those assumptions, and if we get X, then we believe we can achieve X, right? If we find X happens, then this is what we think the potential scenarios are. So basically what you're doing is you're kind of de-risking it and adding credibility to it by showing you've done your research, making sure that you're providing the sources of where that data is coming from. Sometimes it's just quotes, sometimes it's actual data that's been shared publicly, sometimes it's tests that you've run. You can have a variety of different sources. Just make sure that you're sharing what the sources are and that you think that they are credible and why. And then, you've got to really allows them but they see a lot of pitches, and so sometimes, they can be skeptical. So I don't know if you want to provide any more specifics, and I can see I'm kind of cutting in and out, but if you want to provide any more specifics, I might be able to be more specific, but I also welcome you into that room if I cut out. I mean, Jonathan.
Yeah, no worries. Ed, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just going to make sure that you guys, you could reconnect with Angel, because it did come in and out. I did grab some parts, but you'll probably want to follow up in the next room and at noon, I would say next Monday.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, and
awesome.
I appreciate your thoughts, Angel. I think I'll reconnect with you next week. Appreciate it.
Oh, by the way, Will, just to let you know, Hacker Dojo, we did just receive I don't know if you're in the Bay Area, but we just received a pretty large donation from a portion of one of Kitty Hawk's projects, and we have tons of aerospace components to tinker around. So when we open up, you're more than welcome to stop by and play and tinker with some of our components.
Oh, okay, yeah. Can you send me a little more information about that?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll follow you, and once we're closer to opening up, I can let you know when we're opening. But we have a large inventory, a library of components that can support some aviation and aerospace.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate it.
And thanks for joining the stage.
Yeah.
Okay, we all have room for one more question. Mark? You can come to this.
I actually have a question about a startup that I'm working on that it's basically like a conscious marketplace, and I have a few potentials of who I'm working with as far as techs that are already built that can somewhat do what I'm working on. And basically, I heard your piece about creating the brand identity and the shiny and how to attract people, and that's actually one of the main things that I have, because a lot of people that I share this idea with become really passionate and really want to inspire and how to help, and because of just the benefit it creates. Because it's interestingly somewhat like Aslak's COVID-19 verification thing, but it's actually for everything that is either natural, healthy, conscious for a marketplace to create a trusted standard to where everything you purchase basically is healthy, as in a food item being verified by a nutritionist before it's ever even allowed to be sold on the platform, or like a workshop or some form of education already being reviewed by some kind of educational board, to where anything you access you can trust because it's been reviewed by an expert or someone in that field has verified its quality. So I'm actually on stages of starting to move into full-scale development of this, and it's kind of longer than just this piece, and I don't want to take too much time, but I'm interested in speaking to you further about it if you have interest in sharing what resources I have on it so far. But if basically finding the next stages of where to continue to develop and keep moving forward.
Sure. Yeah, so it sounds like, especially in the space that you're in, people are very passionate about sort of these types of products and how they can impact their lives and find balance and serve, unique, specific use cases. So the biggest thing is if you have this passionate community or the nature of the product in the marketplace is involved in these passionate parts of people's lives, if you want to make sure there's actually a clear way for them to take action on that. And otherwise you'll get that naturally, but you really want to direct it. And so it's the idea of creating cues to, if you provide a certification, you have all that, you want to find ways to cue them into sharing it in a way that creates a gravity back to your brand or your conversion point. So a lot of examples of that are creating simple things are like using newsletters and groups and creating like an insider community that has a very low barrier to entry. So, for example, there's a hot sauce company that has our super spicy club. You get the exclusives by signing up, and all of this really is newsletter, right? But this feels like this idea of a community, special access. Sorry. You could also do things with Instant Pot, for example. They have a really passionate user community in Facebook where that's self-sustaining. Those are kind of straightforward ones. But then I think a better way if you're building a marketplace, especially is to prioritize some of that. So things that are automated in the post-purchase experience or even in the product pages that can trigger engagement and potentially feedback or contribution or user-generated content from your customers, either on the site or post-purchase.
Can I reviews?
It could be reviews. It could also be how do you use these types of products? So maybe tips and tricks kind of a situation where it helps the community. Find ways for the community to contribute content to the digital marketplace that may not even be product specific. One example, this is eBay has its community guides. So for example, some people write how do you spot a fake Louis Vuitton or something, right? And that becomes an internal community resource that helps drive more sales and legitimize the sellers of those products, even though it isn't targeted to one specific seller in that example.
And what's that Facebook group that you mentioned?
Instant Pot's a really good example of a Facebook group where the community drives the usage. And so what it does is if you have Instant Pot and you join that group, you're getting all this additional value out of basically the same appliance every single day, and ideas and recipes and usages. Peloton does a really good job as well in the Peloton community. You see wellness communities do really well in this space as well. So if you were to divide this out into 3 categories, you're looking external, super low-hanging fruit through common things that you're familiar with, newsletters, framing a certain context, user groups, stuff like that, and really finding ways to empower the people who do contribute and reinforce them in those channels, or even social media. So for example, with Kogi Barbecue, we had a artist who wrote a song about Kogi Barbecue, and that's awesome. We're going to post him on our Twitter, and we're going to give him a stage and reshare it, and that validates his contribution to us, essentially. And then he gets a bunch of traffic, he gets a bunch of audience, but it shows that we're recognizing him. And then he becomes even more of an ambassador for us because we reinforce that. And so you see that on social media when a brand responds to a really cool post where they're tagged in it or something like that. Or highlights it on their own Instagram in a story share. It just encourages that audience to do more. That's all the external stuff. Then you have the on-platform or in-product experience stuff, which you can scale out programmatically and tag specific vendors, products, or categories. And the whole goal is to guide users to creating feedback, reviews, or resources that then enable a future buyer. And the last part is going to be in that post-purchase scenario that is tied to the product experience or whether that's physical or digital, and potentially maybe connecting them with the manufacturer or the seller of the product. So that could be maybe content that you create that is a follow-up to the purchase that tells more of the story, the values, or maybe the narrative around the product that the person just bought. So let's say there's a really cool, I'm going to use a beauty example. Let's say there's a really cool skin cream, and the ingredients are based on some cultural heritage in a certain part of the world. Well, if you tell a story about that, and you talk about how this is something that's been around for a while, and maybe the creator of the brand actually traveled there and learned more about it, that narrative actually increases the perceived value of the product. And so instead of being this, oh, it's this new brand that launched last year, it's like, oh, this is the culmination of hundreds of years of experience going into this product now in my hands from a remote part of the world that I never would have ever had access to. There's a monumental difference in perception there. And so that's kind of how I would divide out some possible tactics and strategies in terms of approaching it. And again, feel free to hit me up.
And just kind of like general mentorship of finding where the actual people that would be interested in moving this as well, that find that kind of like passionate aspect, and then with their background of like whether it's venture capital or branding or just general kind of like startups.
Yeah, I mean, so are you saying like where to find those audiences essentially?
Yeah, so basically I'm not in the stage of getting funding yet. We're still fine-tuning the development because we have an existing social media profile, and it has a marketplace feature, it has a calendar feature. Basically, I'm kind of going for taking a big bite of redesigning a new conscious Facebook, but obviously that's like a way bigger thing than it is to chew than bite the bite. So basically what we're doing is starting small scale with a conscious community of people that truly value, instead of having to compete against Google AdWords and who pays for more marketing to get you on the first page, is who actually has the better product, who has a thing that doesn't have fake ingredients, who has a thing that is truly consciously beneficial for people. So we already have an algorithm built to where it features those things first instead of actually who pays for more marketing, because it's not about how much you pay Google, it's more about the quality of what you provide.
It's that curation, right? Your values and the validation, the curation, the surfacing of what your community wants. And so in that scenario, there's a lot you can do right now by essentially being this really great community resource. A simple example would be like a newsletter that highlights the top products in the category, that's the stories, and the vendors and why, right? And so instead of it being a sales thing, it's like a community looking forward to like the finds that you've discovered. But really what you're saying right now is before you can build a really comprehensive social platform and e-commerce platform, you can actually still have an impactful effect on customers by combining existing technologies or the algorithm you have to then curate and create this kind of distributed marketplace where your value proposition is going to be that getting that stamp of approval, getting that highlight. And then really, like in this case, you kind of view it as your customer isn't the business, your customer is the people who are passionate about it, and then your value to the businesses that want to work with you is that you can give them this customer. And then from that point of view, which is a little bit slightly different, you might actually be able to find revenue generation, front revenue generation as a marketing or as a distribution point for those businesses, and then leverage that resource against providing more value to your the buyers.
I created like an e-commerce revenue model, kind of like Amazon's, where you take a portion of the sale by providing them the customer that they wouldn't have otherwise. But that's an incredible thing in and of itself, and it's kind of proprietary, and I'll be glad to share that with you more personally because it's a little bit sensitive. But basically, it revolutionized how people can gain access to providing their products and services, the main kind of view, instead of just how much marketing they pay for. Because it's just one of my perceived problems in the world of basically people getting ahead by paying more for marketing rather than having a good quality thing. Or let's say in a health food store, someone uses a conscious name, but when you look at the products and the ingredients themselves, there's still crappy ingredients, but it's in a health food store. So it's kind of like you shouldn't have to be a nutritionist to know what's healthy to put in your mouth. So it's essentially we can have a nutritionist review a product before the other person even tries it and have the trust. So really the main thing we're actually providing is a trust marketplace to where people can find what they're actually looking for and be able to guarantee to our own quality standards feature this is the thing you want in this field. And I really like what you said about kind of creating comparisons, because I think that's a really good point, because you can see that are doing that, but this is why we stand out because of this. So
and I think you're spot on. And so the idea here is to like, how do you reinforce that and create structure out of it that's then one, recognizable, and then two, transferable, so that people then become, consistently, so this becomes a trusted standard or mark, kind of like we were talking about with the COVID thing. And because you're dealing with different environments and different multiple customer types, I'm happy to have a deeper discussion on this, because there's a little bit of details I would need to understand a little bit more explicitly before I can give you a really hard recommendation or a tactic. But essentially, yeah, you're right. The core idea here is going to be, how do you take all of this value and then distill it into a very easy to consume, lightweight, digestible format, whether it's a newsletter or a standard or a marker or a top list that gets then distributed consistently, so that trust is reinforced and becomes a standard over time.
Amazing. Yeah, that's definitely been my biggest challenge, because it is such a big concept and so kind of like revolutionary that it's kind of bringing it down to a digestible portion for the conference. So I really appreciate your what you've shared, and I'd love to reach out directly to you.
Feel free to
email that's for you, or
email is in my bio, or also DM on Twitter is totally fine.
Okay. Thank you, Mike and Mark. Thank you so much for your question, and thank you, Mike and Angel, for attending our lightning talk today. So just to reset the room, we will be this talk will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. And if you want to have any question for the moderator today, just click into the bio on the in the bio in the picture. And Angel have a startup club and Angel club that I believe meets weekly. So you I'm more than welcome to follow her and ask her more questions. See on Twitter also. And Mike have a like he mentioned earlier, he's a founder of Marketing Club, and that club have more than 200k follower right now, and have a lot of useful content if you are interested in marketing and like want to follow Mike and ask for his advice related to anything for your startup and your project related to marketing. And so yeah, that being said, we're so excited to have a lot of people joining our lightning talk today, and thank you so much, Andrew and Mike. And if you want to follow us, we are Hacker Dojo, a 501c3 nonprofit organization in Bay Area, and we will have the talk every last Friday of the month. Today is a little bit changed on schedule, but we will see you guys again on the last Friday of the month, and we are experimenting different platforms. So if you click into my profile, you will see a link to hackerdojo.com, and you will find more information about us. We are a tech community which consists of makers, tech lover, and a lot of, we have a diverse community. We are operating virtually right now due to COVID, but we're looking for our new home in the Bay Area. And when we open, you guys are more than welcome to visit us in the Bay Area and try some making maker space and work in our location as well. Ed, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just some final comments, just to echo the invitation, and thanks for everyone joining. This was a little bit of an experiment for us. We've been running lightning talks every Friday. It was typically, you could go to Hacker Dojo. We were around the block from Y Combinator back in the day, 2012. Grab pizza, beer, and meet a new co-founder. We've been continuing it. We've been changing the schedule. This is our first time trying it on Clubhouse. I think it went great. I love the information and the value that the speakers provided, and the great questions. This has inspired me to maybe want to maybe pick up the frequency on this channel. and see where we can take it from here. But I think it went really well. And again, a very warm thank you to everyone who joined.
And Ed, can I just share something real quick that might be of interest to people in the audience? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Sure, thank you. So the Cal Asian Chamber of Commerce is currently sponsoring underrepresented founders. And how they're doing that is, and I've got the link in my profile, they are asking if you would like speaking opportunities in Clubhouse and at their events, that you fill out a speaker profile. So if you're an underestimated founder in the state of California, then you can fill out the speaker profile, and you can also get strategy sessions with their chamber team, and they will connect you with businesses for business development purposes. So they have larger corporations and small to medium-sized businesses, and so they will help you if you share your deck with them or your kind of one-pager with them. They will connect you with other leaders at other companies who might be a good fit for a business development purpose. And then finally, they are also sponsoring annual memberships in angelclub.com, and angelclub.com is a community of angel stage startups and investors. So it's a $125 annual membership, and they're sponsoring those. So the link is in my profile. The speakers can come from anywhere as long as they're underestimated founders, but if you want to take advantage of the business development and the strategy sessions, you've got to be in California. But the link is in my profile, and the angelclub.com membership, you can go there and fill out that profile for the Cal Asian sponsorship. So I hope that's helpful. Angel
Absolutely. That sounds great. I would love to host Angel Club at the Dojo when we open. So have some power hour from the Angel Club. If you guys are interested in the South Bay area,
that would be great. I would definitely love that. Yep. Thank you.
Awesome.
Alrighty. So with that being said, folks, that concludes our lightning talk. Thank you again. Feel free to reach out to the speakers if you have more questions. More information, you can reach out to us, ping us on our channels, and also reach out via hackerdojo.com. Thank you.